Welcome back, friends, to the shop. So how was your Labor Day? Did you guys have a good time? Did you do anything? Have nice weather? We had a great time. I actually took a couple days off and we spent a lot of time down at the river. We were down there hanging out with the fresh pea, and we got to do lots of kiteboarding and stand-up paddleboarding and just had a great time. It's just a beautiful time of year. Speaking of time of year, okay, so you should have your firewood all cut by now for the following year, and you probably put your chainsaw away. But did you put it away correctly? I'm a big advocate of looking after our saws because for me, living in the area that we do, a chainsaw can be a life safety tool, to borrow a term from firefighting, because of living in the timber. It's quite possible for a big old growth fir, something to fall on a neighbor's house, or it might even be blocking the road for an emergency vehicle. So when we have like really high windstorms and bad ice storms, I actually have a chainsaw in the truck at the ready. So I want to show you my process for putting your saw away for the winter so it won't give you trouble. I think you should put it away in a condition that you can grab it and go, put a little gas in it and go right away, just for the reasons I laid out. So let's get into it. We'll just do the whole process together. I break the process down into two different things. We've got the bar and the chain. Right, and then we've got the power head. So we'll start with this, and this is going to be true for if you go out and you use your chainsaw heavy for the day. This is all going to apply. These are things that you need to do before the job is truly done. With the bar removed, go ahead and take the cover off for the air filter, but leave the air filter on there for right now. The first thing that we're going to do is we got to blow this out. This should be done every time you use your saw. You have to remember that these things cool through this intake right here. It's what pulls the fresh air in to cool that engine, and you get a lot of dust, and you especially in the air filter as well. And of course, this part of the saw is always a huge mess because this is the bar oiler. We've got oilers right there. That's how it lubricates the chain, and then the oil gets all over everything, and it affects cooling, and it just makes a mess. So the best way to get rid of all this stuff is just to blow it out with your compressor. When I'm actively using the saw, like during firewood season, I'm simply going to blow it out, fill it with gas and oil, make sure it's got a sharp chain, adjust it and put back together. I'm not going to go through this next step. This is at the end of the season. So take a pan, maybe something you used to drain your oil in, and I want to clean all this stuff off here. This oil that lubricates the chain is super sticky. And so I'll just put it in here, and you can just hit it with some carburetor cleaner and a little brush. Now, Granddad, he never used carburetor cleaner. That would have been an extravagance. He just used a little tin of gas. And I know, Safety Sally can't stand it not to comment whenever I clean anything with gas, but just know, you sometimes you got to take big risks in life. So I'll just put a little bit of gas in there, and a solvent brush is just perfect. And just clean all this off here. And especially out here, we have in our firs, they have so much sap in them. You get into some of the old ones, and they'll just coat your whole saw with sap. And the only thing really you can cut it with is a carburetor cleaner or a solvent or grease. Be particular around this area right here and get that clean where that's going to be oiling. And your clutches, of course you're not getting into the inside, but we're just cleaning that sap off of there. Set your power head stuff aside. Let it dry before you blow it off a final time, or you just blow gas all over yourself. Your wife loves that when you come in the house smelling like unleaded. And then we'll do the same thing here in our bar. Actually, on a side note, for our East Coast subscribers, you may not have seen anything like this before. This is actually a 32-inch bar. Unlike the 6-inch bars that you guys use, they're similar in many ways. They're just a little more masculine. Here's a pro tip that's almost always overlooked. I don't know, apart from the pro guys, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone do this before. Take your bar off, put it in the vise, and get some sort of a small tool that will fit in between the rails on here and clean this out. Now, I just use a small dental tool, but anything you have, a small screwdriver, but these channels get filled up with grease and oil and all. I mean, look at that, just that one little pull right there, and sawdust and all sorts of things, and will wear your bar out prematurely. So scrape that out of there. Take special note on your bar right here. So these two holes here, these are going to be for your studs, for your adjuster, right? But these right here are your oilers. So that's where the oil comes through to the inside of the channel, and these get clogged with sawdust and everything. So people ask, you know, why is your chainsaw bar upside down? Because every time you change the sharpen the chain or you know, whatever, just get in the habit of it. Maybe it's for you, it's when you change the gas and oil, or when you add gas and oil, you flip the bar. Flip the bar over, and then it will wear more evenly, and your bar will last twice as long, and you'll see that there's oilers on both sides. Well, that's drying. Let's look to our chain. So again, our chains get really covered out here with sap, and they're hard to sharpen, and they just get all jammed up and don't bend very much. So just a quick way to do it, what I've done, and this is all stuff I've learned from my neighbor. He was a professional logger his whole life, and this is how he did it. So good enough for Russell, good enough for me. A little bit of gasoline on there, usually up over the top of the chain. And what he'll do is he lets that sit overnight and soften up. This one here is not particularly dirty, but what I've just found is with just a little bit of solvent or gas or whatever you have, just kind of brush that and work it around, and that will clean all those links up and get all that sap off there. And it's a whole lot nicer to sharpen. It doesn't fill up your file with oil and grease and junk, and just better all the way around. Before you put your saw back together, there's a lot of wear items on these that are made to be replaced. Now this is just an empty case that I had from an old saw. These are the things that you want to have on hand in your saw kit if you're a firewood cutter. Right here. So you want an extra spark plug, right? Get the factory spark plug. You want a set of 3 of these clutch springs. These can break sometimes, and it will put you out of commission. And they just cost a couple dollars. Keep that in your kit. An extra bar nut, because those are easy to vibrate loose. A pilot bearing, also easy to change out. Those will get bad. An adjuster for your carburetor, and primarily these 2 wear strips. These should be replaced about every 3 years or so. And if you look right in here, you'll see this is, I think you can see that, this is where they're at, right here. And this is a brand new saw. It's only been used 1 season, but even so, you can see that there's a lot of wear right there. And that protects the case. And these simply just pop out like this. They're very simple to replace. You can see the back side there, and you could just put the new ones in. So they're just pennies. So just get a couple of those, have those in your case as well. Also check this. This is a chip deflector. So as the chips fly out the back, saws that have a lot of use on them, this will get all ragged and torn. Just make sure that is not torn and in good shape. And that just pops off right there. You can replace that simple enough. And then finally on the side cover is this roller wheel. These will get chowdered up from the chain, but I've found that they last almost for a long time. So just a quick few things just to look at when you're inspecting your side cover. And on the power head side, there's not a whole lot of stuff. You might want to take a look at that sprocket. There's a drive sprocket right there that the chain fits into. Those will get worn. I'll typically, in my case, keep one of those around, and I should have one of those in there, as well as an extra C-clip. Just go to the steel dealership and just ask for those particular parts. They'll have them in stock. They're commonly done, but mainly everything's clean. With that side all sorted, let's take a look at the air filter. Okay, so that looks a lot better. Don't know what this little guy's for. Clean filter, and I will replace these every 3 years or so. Actually, I keep a couple on hand. Make sure you clean out the inside of the air box best you can. Of course, anything that's going to be in your air box is going to go directly into your filters. And I'll tell you guys, it's worth taking the time to do this to you. To me, it's the best value is buying a professional saw. Because as you know, our still saws don't come in, they're not all professional, they come in the home motor grades as well. But if you buy a pro saw like this, it'll last you a lifetime if you take care of it. And then finally, make sure you check the pull cord, that it's not frayed and it's not gonna give you problems. I keep a spare pull cord in my kit as well. Make sure you get the steel factory ones and keep that around so in case you break one. But apart from that, that's basically it. Let's put it back together and then we'll move on to the sharpening. And don't put your chain on backwards. Just a quick way to remember is that the pointy teeth always go forward. The way, like when you were, how I remember it is you're going to be moving towards the log to cut it, right? And you want that chainsaw, those teeth pointing the way there. Here's something I've come up with on my own, and I'm really loving the silicone, like the detailing sprays. And there's lots of different ones. I've been trying several of them to find out which one's the best. Primarily what I'm looking for is when I put it on, I don't want it to be oily and greasy. I want it to have like a protectant from moisture and with lubricating qualities and just, but not all shiny and drawing a bunch of dirt in. And I can't decide which one I like best. The Amsoil Mudslinger, I started using this on dirt bikes, and what I found was if you just, when you're done washing and it's all dry and done with it, ready to put it away, to mist the whole thing with it, dirt almost won't stick to it because I don't know if it's a silicone or what it is, but the next time you go to pressure wash it, it almost just falls off and it doesn't get in there and like etch the aluminum and stain it. The other really good one is the Maxima SC1, and I can't tell you which one's better. I usually just buy whichever one's cheaper. But what I find with this stuff is that you can just spray everything, and it gives UV protection for all of the rubber and the plastic. It's kind of slippery, so everything kind of gets lubricated and it just moves and works better. And I just spray the whole thing down, man. I do the bar and the chain and everything. Just coat that whole thing. It's like me in the second grade with my mom and the hairspray. I went to school with like a hard shell of hair. That was, of course, when I had my own hair before I wore hair pieces. But well, you guys know the story. I think I like the Mudslinger the best because it smells better. It has a nice, smells like strawberries or something good. Now you're probably going to ask about the spark plug. Do I replace the spark plug every year? I don't. I haven't found it necessary. If you burn a premium oil, like a Lucas or an Amsoil or a Stihl factory oil, a two-stroke mix, it's not likely you're going to have any spark plug problems if you mix it correctly. So I always have a spare spark plug in my wood cutting kit just in case. But I guess I'd probably go 2 or 3 seasons on a spark plug. They just don't seem to give much trouble anymore. Now when you're adjusting your chain, make sure you lift up a little bit there, get that tension off there, tighten it, and you should just have a nice snap back. If you see the bottom of your bars are turning blue or getting black, obviously from overheating, you might be running your chain too tight. So be careful with that. If you cut it in a lot of brush and your chain is coming off a lot, go ahead and tighten it up a little bit more. And when you go into brush like that, make sure that you run the saw at full throttle, and it's much less likely to jump off. I'll tell you what, guys, a brand new serviced saw gives me the fizz. On that silicone, once you let it sit for a little bit, just wipe off the excess, and it won't attract dust. But that's going to protect it, especially if you live in an area, where you have a shop at like a pole barn like me, where you got a lot of moisture in it. It's really going to protect all that stuff. It's going to protect the UV, or the UV protection in that stuff is going to keep the plastic from fading as badly, and it just, I don't know what it is about it, especially on the bikes. It just makes everything slippery and protected and nice, and the sap doesn't stick as much, and the chips don't stick, and it falls off, and all the little levers and controls work better. And it's just, I love the stuff. That is probably about all the time we have today, but what a difference, huh? A little bit of TLC, and you can put your saw away knowing it's going to be ready for you next year and not going to give you trouble. Now, putting away gas or no gas. What we found in the fire department and what seems to work the best is if you have things you don't get to too often, it's going to sit for a while. Of course, number one, non-ethanol fuel. If you can't find non-ethanol fuel, ask around. Usually your premium fuel is going to have less or no ethanol in it, but you can search around. I think there's a website now that'll show you where those locations are. But better than that is store them dry. Run them completely empty. Don't just pour it out, but pour it out, start the saw, and run it until the carburetor dies, till it's completely dry. And then you're better off for long-term storage, in our experience, for sure. and if you don't want to have troubles, unless you want to get in and rebuild that carburetor every year because you put cheap fuel in and you saved a few pennies to waste half a day and $50, $60 in parts or more if you have a shop do it. Okay, so what always comes up, people ask, what saw would I recommend for the common guy? I think if you have the means and if you can, buy a professional saw. Now, Stihl is going to have multiple layers of saws from your basic homeowner saws, and what you end up usually getting with the homeowner saws, it's going to have a lot more plastic in it, usually not quite as much power, and not as ergonomic, heavier. The pro saws typically, and you don't have to have a huge saw to be a pro saw. This here is a pro saw. This is a 260. This is one that I run, and I run you can run a long bar on them. I run a 25-inch bar on the little 260. Stihl probably says no, but it seems to work fine. You just have to, you can't go into it, like a ham-fisted like you can with a big saw, but you can get through it just fine. But the nice thing it gives you is it gives you that reach to be able to limb and to cut stuff without hunching over all the time. But if I was going to recommend just one saw to most guys, if you don't need a full wrap handle, if you don't need big power, and you're not cutting anything, say, bigger than 24 inches or so, the 260 or the 261, 262, whatever the new ones are a fabulous saw. It'd be the last saw you ever buy. Buy a 25-inch bar, a couple extra full skip chains or half skip chains, and you will be in good shape. This saw has been in the rotation, and Jack can use it, Mrs. W can use it. Now, if you need something bigger, there's a new saw coming out this year. I was just talking to my buddies at the saw shop. Stihl's got their very first ever fuel-injected saw that's coming out. It's going to be a 500. Now, this is a 461. This is the saw of choice for most fallers, pro fallers in this area. But the new 500 is going to have more power than the 461, and it's lighter, and it's fuel injected. So that is going to be, I can't wait to get my hands on one of those. And if I do, I'll do a video review for you guys. It probably even throw a 36-inch chain on that. It should have enough power for that. But that's going to be an exciting thing. One other side note, it's really interesting. So if I were going to order a saw in a big saw, make sure you order the Western style full wrap handle. This is a Western only thing, and it was invented here by professional fallers years ago. And you can see that the handle wraps fully around the whole saw. And what that gives you is that gives you the ability to hold the saw in pretty much any angle. If you contrast that with the traditional handle, like we have on the little 260 there, you can see that it doesn't wrap on the side there like the big one does. And you can't, it's just not as versatile. So you guys out east, maybe you haven't seen these before, or they don't carry them in your saw shop. Just talk to your dealer and they can order it for you. And if you live in cold climate, you can order the Arctic version, which has a heated wrap handle. I've never had one, but I've seen them in the catalogs. But this is what you want. You want the Western style full wrap, and you're really set. There's some really interesting things. Another one. Those funny little corks that are, I can't even find the words right now, that are exclusive to our area. Another thing that's similar to like the full wrap handles is that fishing out here, all reel fishermen, guys that are really into it, we use left-handed reels. And it just makes sense because there's a lot of river fishing, so there's a lot of reeling and casting, whether you're drifting for steelhead or you're throwing spinners for Chinook, there's a lot of casting and retrieving, kind of like you do with the bass fishing. But we have left-handed reels because your right hand is your dominant hand, and that's how you cast, and you reel with the left. And when you're setting a hook, you're coming up with your strong hand, and then you fight the fish and play it. I don't know why anyone would have a bait casting reel or a closed face reel that would be right-handed and try to cast with your left hand. It's weird, but apparently the manufacturers sell 99% of all the reels that they sell that are left-handed all go out to the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, and Washington. It's kind of an interesting thing. So, all right, next time, on the next video, I've been asked just get back to basics. Show us how to sharpen a chainsaw without all of the fancy gadgets, right? We don't need the electric grinder. We don't need this. Just getting back to the basics. How does a pro file a saw when he needs to do it quick and fast and make production, right? And I'm going to show you. We'll strip away all that stuff. You need 3 things. I'll show you how to do it. Anyone can do it. It doesn't take that much practice. You can file your own saws and you'll impress your ladies, right? Because a man needs to know how to sharpen his own chainsaw. There's nothing worse than wanting to cut wood and then you have to drive down to your lawnmower shop and drop off the chains, and you don't want to be that guy. You need to do it yourself. It's simple to do and there's no reason not to. Just favorite the video and you can go watch it if you forget. Thanks for watching. Keep us in your prayers and don't forget to click the thumbs up if you enjoy these videos, and we'll see you guys on the next one.